Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack compelling sources to get you up to speed on topics that genuinely matter. Today, we're looking into something pretty fascinating, how ideas about justice from, well, ancient wisdom connect surprisingly tightly with some of the really big global challenges we're facing right now.
Yeah, and our main source for this is a book called 40 on Justice, The Prophetic Voice on Social Reform by Omar Suleiman. Think of this as maybe your fast track to seeing how a tradition from the 7th century offers, well, real insights for our 21st century lives.
It's interesting you mentioned that because the timing of the book is quite pointed. It came out March 2021 from Cube Publishing, and its goal is pretty clear. You dive into Islamic principles of justice, specifically from Prophet Muhammad's teachings, and crucially, apply them directly to today's problems.
Okay, so like what kind of problems?
Oh, everything from social inequality, environmental crises, human rights issues. It really frames this ancient wisdom not as something dusty on a shelf, but as a vital toolkit for now. It shows its active relevance, That makes sense. And the author, Omar Suleiman, he brings quite a unique perspective, doesn't he? He's a Palestinian-American scholar, an imam, activist speaker, originally from New Orleans.
Exactly. And he holds a couple of key positions. He's the founder and president of the Yakin Institute for Islamic Research. Plus, he's an adjunct professor of Islamic Studies at Southern Methodist University.
So that background lets him connect the dots, right, between traditional scholarship and what's happening on the ground today, bringing academic weight, but also that real-world experience into his writing.
Precisely. He bridges those worlds very effectively.
Okay, so for you listening, our mission here is to sort of unpack the structure, the big ideas, the key insights from Suleiman's book. It's about 350 pages. We want to help you see why it matters and maybe how its principles could even apply in today's world.
And what's really interesting about 40 on Justice is how it uses a traditional Islamic literary format. It collects 40 hadiths, which are, sayings or actions attributed to Prophet Muhammad, all centered on one theme, justice in this case.
40 specific sayings on justice.
Okay, right. And the book is organized by theme. Each chapter takes one hadith. Suleiman gives you the historical context, links it to verses in the Quran, Islam's sacred text, provides analysis for today, applies it. And often, he'll finish with his own reflection, or even a short prayer.
That sounds like a really clear, effective structure, especially covering such a wide range of issues through that historical lens. Thinking about that breadth, what was maybe the most surprising link you found between that ancient wisdom and a modern problem?
Well, that's a good question. Because he does cover a huge amount: basic human rights, dignity, family stuff, gender equality, even environmental stewardship, which, like you hinted, might catch some people off guard.
The environmental part, yeah.
For me, the focus on environmental ethics really stood out.
Yeah.
They don't always immediately connect a 7th century tradition with, say, climate change debates or resource conservation. But Suleiman pulls out these hadith that show Prophet Muhammad's, deep concern for nature.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He brings up a teaching where the Prophet told his companions not to waste water, even if they were right next to a flowing river. I mean, that's an incredibly direct, really powerful message about managing resources that just resonates so strongly with our climate crisis today.
Wow, yeah. That specific example really lands. And it makes me wonder, is the book mostly about what I should do as an individual, or is it pushing for bigger changes?
That's a key point. It's definitely not just about personal piety, though that's part of it. Suleiman is quite clear that the Prophet's teachings call for systemic change too, alongside that personal transformation.
Okay, so both individual and collective action.
Exactly. The book shows how Islam's view of justice needs both. The individual commitment, yes, but also working together to fix unjust systems. Each chapter tries to move beyond just theory into practical steps, constantly bridging that gap between 7th century Arabia and our global challenges now. It offers concrete ways to, put these principles into action.
Now, for listeners maybe thinking, okay, sounds important, but is it a really dense academic slog to get through? What's the writing style like?
Actually, no, he writes with remarkable clarity. It's very accessible, but he doesn't skimp on the scholarly depth either. His writing hits this nice balance between academic rigor and sort of spiritual reflection. He makes complex theological ideas understandable, even if you're not deeply familiar with Islamic traditions.
That's good to hear.
And his personal voice comes through too, especially in those concluding prayers he sometimes includes. It adds this kind of intimate devotional feel to it.
Okay. And what about any critical points or areas where readers might want more?
Well, okay, fair question. While the book does a great job connecting classic teachings to now, some readers might wish for a bit more grappling with potential tensions, perhaps, or the nuances involved in applying ancient wisdom so directly to modern life. And, while he handles potentially sensitive topics carefully, some interpretations might push back against more traditional views.
Right, interpretations can differ.
Of course. Also, its biggest strength, covering so much ground thematically, sometimes means certain topics get maybe less in-depth treatment than they could. But that's kind of inherent in the 40 Hadith format, and he does provide a really extensive bibliography if you want to dig deeper into specific areas.
That makes sense. So thinking about where this fits in, how does 40 on Justice compare to other contemporary Islamic writing out there?
It definitely stands out because of its strong focus on social reform. It's not just about individual spirituality, which many Islamic texts rightly focus on. Suleiman's work is part of this growing trend emphasizing Islam's social justice side.
Okay.
And you could even place it within broader conversations like interfaith discussions on religion's role in fighting inequality. If you know anything about, say, liberation theology in Christianity or the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, repairing the world, you'll hear some really strong echoes in how Suleiman presents Islamic social ethics.
That's a really helpful comparison. So let's try to boil down the main takeaways from our deep dive today. 40 on Justice seems to successfully connect classical Islamic teachings with really current concerns, offers both spiritual food for thought and practical guidance.
Absolutely.
And it seems valuable for a few different groups, right? Muslims wanting to go deeper into their tradition's justice roots, non-Muslims getting a window into Islam's ethical side. And really, anyone concerned with social reform could find some valuable wisdom here.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. The book is a powerful example, really, that religious traditions aren't somehow irrelevant or purely historical. They can offer potent resources for tackling today's challenges. Suleiman really shows how Prophet Muhammad's teachings are still providing guidance for creating, more just, more compassionate societies.
So, maybe a final thought to leave you, the listener, with. If ancient wisdom, like what we explored in 40 on Justice, can offer such profound and practical guidance on issues as varied as environmental care and human dignity in our modern world, what other unexpected insights might be hiding in plain sight, in diverse traditions that maybe we don't always look to?
That's a great question to ponder.
Yeah, maybe looking back at some historical principles could actually unlock some genuinely fresh approaches to the really big challenges we face today. Something to think about.